Welcome to AQMD on the Air. I'm your host, Mark Carroll. Joining us today is Jacki Bacharach, Executive Director of the South Bay City's Council of Governments. Among her many accomplishments is her service of 14 years as mayor and council member in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, and 12 years on the LA County Transportation Commission. She was also a charter member of the Alameda Corridor Transportation Authority and the founding chair of the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, the 5-county agency that operates the Metrolink commuter rail system. Jacki Bacharach, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
First, what communities make up the South Bay COG?
South Bay COG is basically between the Port of Los Angeles and the airport, LAX. We have 16 communities. We have 4 on the peninsula, 4 beach cities, 4 inland cities, and then 3 basin cities. And then we include the harbor area of Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles, and county unincorporated area.
The famous beaches are in the South Bay.
Yeah, Hermosa Redondo, Manhattan, and El Segundo.
You say that the vision of what the Council of Governments can do for your member communities can best be described in 3 words: partnership, persuasion, and performance. What does this mean in relation to the Council's goals and priorities?
Well, our goal is really to create a sustainable South Bay and to help our cities do that. And we try very hard to add value to what they're already doing, not to get in their way. So partnering is our cities. We work with them. Persuasion is all the other stakeholders to work on projects that we really need to get done. And performance is getting things done, which is really important to us.
At AQMD, we see partnership as vital to attaining the federal clean air standards and working in partnership with other entities in the community. And I know the South Bay Council of Governments has a grant from the AQMD to demonstrate how local use vehicles can be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to improve air quality, and to reduce gasoline consumption. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Sure, I'd love to. Our local use vehicle program was funded by the AQMD, and it comes out of a 5-year study that we did to look at how people move around the South Bay. We don't have a lot of transit, and so we wanted to find how people really travel. And we found that people's trips, their normal trip outside of the work trip, is less than 3 miles. So we thought, let's see if we can test what that really means in reality. And we went around and tried to get a grant, and I have to say that we were too out of the box for most places, but when we got to AQMD, senior management did understand what we were trying to do and funded our grant. What the LOVE project is, and we call it LOVE because it's local use vehicles. The LOVE project is 7 vehicles that we have in the community, and we give them to residents for 2 to 3 months. And they actually use them in their daily life. We don't want it to be just a week. We want them to really incorporate it into their daily life. We have different manufacturers, so we can test different kinds of vehicles. These are slow-speed vehicles that go only 25 miles an hour on 35-mile-an-hour streets. But since they're not going very far, that's not a big deal. We have every vehicle equipped with GPS, so we know exactly where they're going, and we know how they're using the vehicle. And that data has been very rich for us. We found that the people that drive these vehicles totally love them. We've had circumstances where the driver will get into their regular vehicle and the battery will be dead because they haven't used it for such a long time. So it's been a really interesting project, and it's proven that you really can use this, not for your first car, but for your second car. And we also found that in the South Bay there's 250,000 what we call secondary vehicles. So if you try to replace those, you've made a pretty good dent.
And so what are they using those vehicles for specifically? Sure,
they're using them for those kind of local trips of going to the doctor, picking your kids up from school, going on errands, shopping locally, which of course also helps the local economy. The vehicles, just by definition, stay off of the arterials, so they are on the smaller streets and easing some traffic that way as well. And they're smaller, so they can get into places.
Does it seem possible that, based on the feedback that you've gotten, that large-scale deployment of local use vehicles is possible?
Well, the interesting thing about large-scale deployment is that it is a technology that's very niche right now. So for large-scale deployment, you're going to need a couple of things, both public sector and private sector. In the public sector, what you're going to need, we think, is more attention on complete streets. What to do with that right-of-way, which is really getting to be very precious.
Right.
How do we handle that right-of-way? And we would like to see shared lanes with bike lanes. In Lincoln, which is a community in Northern California, they actually do have a lot of these vehicles, and they have wider bike lanes. And it helps bicyclists because they're not riding in narrow lanes, and these vehicles are also on the side of the road. The other thing is these vehicles can only go on 35-mile-an-hour streets, and they're going 25. And we think there are many states that allow them to go 35 miles an hour. And we would like to see California or the National Highway Transportation Institute, NHTSA, change the requirements so they can go 35 because we think that's probably safer. We actually had to put a sign on the back of our vehicles that say slow-moving vehicle.
I see.
And then the private sector. What we need to do there is the price point. They're too expensive for what they are, and we know that. Right now we're trying to get them out there and help use economies of scale to write that down. The second thing we found is the craftsmanship on these vehicles. They've been made somewhat on the cheap, so the knobs and the little adjustments that people are used to are not crafted as well as we would like to see them. And then the third thing is you can't find them anywhere. We would like dealerships. We're trying to get a dealership into the South Bay that would at least have some so that you could touch them and feel them and maybe even try them out.
How does a project like the Love Project fit into the AQMD's Air Quality Management Plan?
Well, we think it's a perfect fit for the AQMP. And the reason we feel that way is that it addresses the short trip. The short trip has a couple of interesting dynamics to it. First of all, it's cold starts, usually a lot of cold starts. It's a trip that can't easily be handled by transit. You don't really get on a bus to go less than 3 miles. So there's not a lot of service, and there's not anyway in the South Bay a lot of service. And it's not discretionary usually. It's something that you can't wait 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20. You know, people just want to get in their car and they want to go. So it's an on-demand, clean vehicle that gets you where you want to go, provides mobility, and reduces criteria pollutants. What we found is that with our tests, we demonstrate 25% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, in gasoline consumption, and in criteria pollutants per household.
Related to the local use vehicle project is, as you mentioned, is the short trips, reduction of short trips. And short trips are a big part of vehicle miles traveled, and the idea of livable communities is connected to that. Can you talk about what livable communities means for the South Bay?
Well, in the South Bay, we sort of don't call it livable anymore. We call it sustainable because livable has sort of been taken over sort of by the transit-oriented development. And we don't have a lot of transit in the South Bay. South Bay, for us, the sustainable South Bay is a community that's totally built out. We have very few opportunities to change our land use, and that would happen over time. But it's also a community that doesn't have a lot of transit. We have okay transit, but on the weekends there are many lines that don't even have service. So we needed to find how to make that work. So we have a sustainable community strategy that was developed after about 5 years of study, and that strategy has two components. There's a land use component and the transportation. The transportation, as I've told you, is shorter trips. The land use component is what we call neighborhood-oriented development. So instead of TOD, we talk about NOD. And NOD is neighborhood commercial centers that have a lot of depth to them, that have a lot of functions, so that you can really go to your neighborhood and get a lot of things done.
How does this relate to the fact that the South Bay is in the center of the sort of the goods movement center of Southern California? All the arterials, LAX, the ports, putting neighborhoods in the midst of all the goods movement. How does that fit in?
Well, we'd have to keep the goods movement on the major roads, and what's most concerned to us, we know that goods movement is in two categories, I like to say. One is the freight that's actually moving through Los Angeles, and the other is what's needed. And we need it in the South Bay. We need our bananas, and we need to service our local businesses. So for what's going through the area, we need to help whatever the powers that be, get that on trains, on dock rail, near dock rail, so that it really doesn't get on our streets in the first place. For the areas that we have to have it on our streets, the trucks that are servicing local businesses, we want them to be cleaner. We want them to be to have intelligent transportation systems so that they get 24-hour traffic alerts. They know they don't have to queue, they don't have to have a lot of delays, and they can operate as efficiently as possible. And that's important to us.
I know that the South Bay has a sustainability strategy regarding land use and transportation, and it even got an award. Right. Can you talk about the purpose of the plan and what makes it noteworthy? Well,
the purpose of the plan is, as I said, we looked at the South Bay. I should give credit to our research director, Wally Simbab. He's the one that came up with this concept. We looked at the South Bay and we saw that people's trips are short and that we're pretty dense. As it turns out, we're actually a very dense community. So how do you handle a built-out community that's pretty dense, that has short trips? And that's why the South Bay Sustainable Strategy has two parts to it. The land use, which is the neighborhood commercial development and the local trips, promoting local trips. And we're doing that not just by love vehicles, but we want to promote bicycles, and we're trying very hard to get a car sharing started in the South Bay because we think that's important as well. And then one of our challenges is affordability. We know that there's an environmental justice issue with telling people just go buy an electric vehicle. So we're really working on neighborhood car sharing, neighborhood van pool, try to see if we can get van pools generated out of the neighborhoods, and then other neighborhood kinds of cooperative.
And are there any other ways that the sustainability strategy fits into the AQMP as we discussed?
Well, we think it fits in the sustainable strategy. It was the only alternative strategy in SCAG's 2012 Regional Transportation Plan. So we think it's an important component. And one of the things that's noteworthy that I was going to mention is that it hasn't picked up by a lot of planners. And we're really sort of surprised at that because for built communities like ours, we think there's more of us in California than there are Wilshire corridors. So if you're going to replicate how to handle a built community, we think the AQMP ought to look at this as a way to model and address these kinds of trips. One of the things is modeling. They model transit-oriented development, but we'd like them to model neighborhood-oriented development so that we have some comparisons for the different areas that need different solutions.
And are there other communities that are looking at your study?
Right now we're not aware of it. We know that it's been addressed at SCAG, but we don't know of anybody that's looking at it as deeply as we are. And SCAG has funded us for a Compass project, one of their funding projects, where we are going to assess the feasibility of neighborhood-oriented development in 3 very diverse locations in the South Bay. So we're going to do plans and see how they work.
Are there any other ways in which the COG and the AQMD might be able to work together, such as partnering to advocate for more funds and policies that benefit the region?
Absolutely. I look at the South Bay COG as innovative, out of the box, ready to try new things. And I look at AQMD as an agency that promotes that kind of thing. So I think we have a natural affinity to work together. And we have on the Love Project, AQMD was out at a press conference with us at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I forgot to mention Enterprise Rent-A-Car. It's one of our partners. And Enterprise Rent-A-Car now, because of our Love Project in the South Bay, they have one of their offices where they have 5 Leaf vehicles to rent. And if you come in with an electric vehicle, they will give you a 15% discount on a full-range vehicle for the day to take a longer trip. So they're very progressively promoting electric vehicles, and AQMD came out and did a press conference with us to promote that. They also do their EV 101 workshops, which we find very helpful. And then we're hoping to work with AQMD in the next few months to have a regular full-speed battery electric vehicle project, very similar to our Love project. So we hope this is a long-term partnership.
Jacki Bacharach, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for helping make the South Bay a more livable place to live.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show. I'm Mark Carroll. Thank you for watching AQMD on the Air. Visit us at cleanairconnections.org to learn how you can help us clean the air that we breathe.
Let's work together.